Good morning, students. How are you all? I hope you all are keeping well and taking care of yourselves. In our today's SST class, we will be doing history, lesson 8, the first empire, Ashoka the Great, the emperor who gave up war. Now we will start with the expansion of the empire. Now, during the period from 600 BC to 400 BC, there appeared in India a few powerful kingdoms and republics. The first were smaller states known as Janpadas, which with the passage of time these Janpadas conquered the neighboring states and thus were formed bigger states known as Mahajanpadas. A little before Buddha, northern India came to be divided into 16 such Mahajanpadas. Now student, as I told you in your previous chapters, you studied that as people began to settle, they started settling down in smaller groups. These smaller groups slowly started developing into towns and states. And the smaller states came to be known as Janpadas and the bigger ones came to be known as Mahajanpadas. Now the rulers of these smaller Janpadas started capturing the bigger town, more and more towns, and started forming Janpadas, Mahajanpadas. Now with the passage of time, Magda under Bhimbisra and his son Ajat emerged as the strongest state in North India. These rulers were not only great conquerors but also great administrators. So under them Magda progressed by leaps and bounds. Now they were great administrators, means they worked for the progress of their people, and they progressed with leaps and bounds, means they progressed in every field. Under the next ruler, that is Nanda, especially Mahapadma Nanda, Magda continued its progress further. When Alexander invaded India in 326 BC, Magda was being ruled by a Nanda ruler, Dhanananda. Now Chanakya Maurya and expansion of the empire. Making the best use of the confusion which prevailed in Punjab after the death of Alexander, young Chandragupta Maurya, with the help of his companion and guru Chanakya, who was also known as Kautilya, drove the Greeks out of Punjab and conquered it. In the next years, making the best use of the impulsivity of the last Nanda ruler, Dhanananda, he conquered Magda. Now, this Chandragupta Maurya, along with his guru, who is known as Chanakya, who is also known as Kautilya, he tried to conquer over the territories nearby, that is Magda especially, which he conquered and he won over it. He took over the territory from Dhanananda, a Nanda king. Now and formed his empire. Empire means when the members of the same family take over the throne one after another. Then he never looked back and added one territory after another to his state. He transformed it into a vast empire. When Seleucus, a Greek general, invaded India, Chandragupta Maurya defeated him. Seleucus not only surrendered the 4 provinces of Herat, Kandahar, Kabul and Baluchistan, but also had to give his daughter Helena in marriage. Now, encouraged by the success in the north, Chandragupta Maurya is credited to have won many southern states. When extended from Bengal in the east to the Hindu Kush in the west, from Himalayas in the north and Mysore in the south, Chandragupta was a great administrator. After Chandragupta Maurya, his son Bindusar took over the throne, and he did not rule much, but after him the illustration was taken over by his son Ashoka. Now after the Mauryan Empire, many empires were established, but among them the Mauryan Empire is considered to be the most powerful and the most successful empire. Now how this Mauryan administration was carrying on, we will study about the administration. Most of our knowledge about the Mauryan administration is derived from the accounts recorded by the Greek ambassador, that is Megasthenes, from his book Indica. The other sources of our knowledge is the Chandragupta, Mr. Chanakya's Kautilya's, that is called Arthashastra. So most of our knowledge from about the Mauryan Empire we get to know about from two books. That is Indica, which was written by a Greek ambassador called Megasthenes, and the second is Arthashastra, which was written by Chanakya. Now this we will study about the various governments. The Mauryan Empire had divided its government, and different parts were ruled in a different manner. Now first comes is the central government. The king was the highest authority of the state. He was, however, assisted by council of ministers, mantris. The ministers were wise and loyal, and time to time they used to give him advice. Besides the ministers, there were other officers also, those who carried on the other duties. They were the Adhyakshas, they are known as superintendents, the Amatyas, they were known as the executive officers, the Mahamantras, they were known as the governors, Pradikshas, who were known as the revenue officers, Rajukas, who were known as the judicial officers, and the Yuktas, who were the treasurer officers. Now provincial government. The whole empire was divided into four provinces: the Magdha, Taxila, Ujjain, and the Savragiri. The administration of the district was looked after Sanathas, and that of the village headman, who was known as the Gramikas or the Gramini. Now revenue system. Land revenue, the whole thing was divided into 1/4 and 1/6, and which was given as a tax to the government. Taxes were also collected from those who used to keep cattle, those who lived in the forest, those who collected things from the forest, or professionals like other professions. If they were this thing, a goldsmith or a blacksmith, they also were supposed to pay tax. Any type of trade they did, they were supposed to pay tax. Now military administration. Now Chandragupta maintained a huge army. He had an army of soldiers on foot, soldiers on elephants, soldiers on horses, and he also had spies who used to give him information time to time. Chandragupta himself used to disguise himself and visit his town. Now civic administration of Patliputra. Megasthenes tells us about the city of Patliputra, which was very beautiful city of the Mauryans, and it was the capital city of the Mauryans. It was a deep moat and a high walls. It was surrounded by high walls. All the houses, including the king's palace, were made of wood. The king's palace was magnificent, and he lived a luxury life. The administration of the city was looked after by a committee of 30 members. This committee was further divided into 6 boards. Now the first board was supposed to take care of the industries and the arts. The second board looked after the needs of the foreigners, those who came to the town, and about their needs like the guest house and everything. The third board recorded the births and the deaths. The fourth board took a check over the trade, the weights of the things which were sold and bought. The fifth board ensured the quality of the goods which were being sold. The sixth board collected taxes on the sold items. The committee also took steps to ensure health and sanitation, build hospitals, roads, parks, schools, and temples. Ashoka's ascension to the throne. Ashoka is regarded as one of the most popular rulers of ancient India. He belonged to the Mauryan dynasty. He was born in 302 BC during Bindusar's reign. He served as the governor of Taxila and Ujjain, and thus got enough experience for the administration. He succeeded to the throne after his father's death in 273 BC, but his coronation ceremony means the ceremony where he is crowned as the king, was held after 4 years later, 269 BC. Probably the delay of 4 years was the war between him and his brother, because they were fighting for the throne. His elder brother Susima, who wanted the throne. Now, he was also known as Devanam, the beloved one of God, and he was also known as Priyadarshi, which means the handsome looking. Now, Kalinga War, 261 BC, and expansion of the Mauryan Empire. The conquest of Kalinga by Ashoka was perhaps the most important event of his reign. Ashoka had inherited a vast empire from his grandfather and his father, but Kalinga, the modern province of was not yet under him. It was the desire of his father and grandfather to take over Kalinga, but they could not, and then it became the desire of Ashoka also. Now, and aggression could not tolerate the existence of an independent state. He could not tolerate the existence of an independent state just near his empire, the borders of his empire. Thus, Ashoka invaded this territory. The Kalinga people offered tough resistance, but they were ultimately overpowered by the military of the Mauryan Empire. They could not stand before the strong army of the Mauryan Empire, and ultimately they lost the battle. Now, many were killed, thousands were injured, thousands were killed. There was a lot of bloodshed, and finally they were defeated. Now, this war, how it changed Ashoka? Result of the Kalinga War. Death and destruction in Kalinga made Ashoka unhappy. It became a turning point in his life, and he became the first monarch in the world history to abandon the path of war and violence. For the next 30 years that he ruled, he never went for war and became an ardent follover of Buddha. Upagupta, who was the guru, introduced him to Buddhism. Thereafter, Ashoka gave up his ambition of Digvijay, which means victory in all directions, and pursued the policy of Dharma Vijay. Ashoka's empire was very vast, and thus it was the biggest empire also. Now, as I said, the war of Kalinga changed Ashoka's life, and he became a follower of Buddha. Now, Ashoka's Dharma or Dhammama. Ashoka's Dhammama. This is a new religion which was started by Ashoka, which was in the Pali form of or not Sanskrit, because the people there did not understand Sanskrit much. The local people, they understood the Pali language. Now, the moral principles of Dharma, Ashoka's Dharma religion. First was respect to elders, which means everyone should respect their elders. Then respect to young ones. It meant that not only elders should get respect, but they should also be kind and show love towards their younger ones. Ahimsa. Ahimsa means there should be no violence even towards animals. Nobody should kill even animals. Tolerance. Tolerance means Ashoka says that one should honor one's own sect but should not condemn the other people. Like, you should respect your people, but it is not that you should disrespect others. Then truthfulness. Truthfulness means one should be truthful in every field. Sixth, charity. Charity means one should give to the poor. One should even give knowledge. Those who are educated should impart education to the others. So that is what he used to say. And the seventh one is pure life. Pure life means that one should be pure and lead a simple life. One should not show anger, cruelty, pride or jealousy towards anybody. That is what when one leads a pure life. Now, these were the 7 principles of Ashoka's Dharma religion. Now, Ashoka and Buddhism. Ashoka occupies a high place in the history of Buddhism. In the beginning, he led a comfortable and luxurious life and indulged in all sorts of merrymaking. But the sufferings and bloodshed during the War of Kalinga in 261 BC brought a great change in his life. He became an ardent follower of Buddhism. He now devoted all his time, energy and resources for the spread of Buddhism in India and outside India. Now, Ashoka's measures to spread Dharma or Buddhism. Now, what steps were taken by him to spread his religion Dharma and to spread Buddhism? He himself set an example before his people and gave up hunting and eating. Secondly, he engraved the principles of Dharma on the rocks and pillars so that everybody could read them. Then he used Pali language, which was the language of the common people. He directed his officers to follow these principles, to preach them and among the common people. He appointed Dharma Mantras, whose duty was to improve the general life conditions of the people. Ashoka himself made a tour of his empire. He sent monks to preach the religion of the Buddha to far off countries. His own son Mahendra and his daughter Sanghamitra went to Sri Lanka. Ashoka called the third Buddhist council at Patriputra to remove differences among different groups of Buddhism. Now, Ashoka's edicts and inscriptions. Most of our knowledge about Ashoka we get from the inscriptions which are engraved on the rocks and on the pillars. His edicts were inscribed in the Prakrit language and not Sanskrit, because this was the language of the common people which was spoken those days. Now let us study about the Ashoka's administration. Ashoka's administration laid great stress on people's welfare. He built many roads and planted trees on both the sides of the road. He built rest houses for the travelers. He had dug wells for the people. He opened large number of hospitals, both for people and for animals. He treated his subjects like his own children. All the time he was ready to serve his people. Ashoka appointed a new class of officers, those who were known as Dharma Mantras, whose duty was to develop moral values among the people and to supervise their actions of the other officers. He had instructed his officers to make the life of the citizens happy and prosperous. Ashoka himself took over tours and to see that how people were living in his empire. Now, Ashoka's place in history. Ashoka occupies an important place in the history of India. He is regarded as one of the greatest ruler in the history. Like Alexander, he was a great conqueror. But he gave up fighting for a cause. In addition, Ashoka raised Buddhism from a local sect to the world religion. That time Buddhism was not spread all over. It was Ashoka who made Buddhism spread all over. Ashoka followed the policy of religious tolerance. Ashoka gave the best administration to his subjects. He treated them like his own children. He was always ready to serve them, not only men but even animals too. Hospitals were opened. In fact, there were all-round development during his rule. That is why in history Ashoka is praised, and he is also known as Ashoka the Great. And with this we have finished the chapter. I will send you the question answers.